Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending wherever you are watching in the world, and welcome back to the channel. And in today's video, we are going to be looking at how Erik Ten Hag is trying to revolutionise Manchester United, and with all the tactics that he has tried implementing in pre-season. We ended up playing 5 pre-season games, one against Rosenborg, against Rangers, Arsenal, Real Betis, and Liverpool. Results not being as important as kind of what we're trying to do tactically, but nonetheless we only ended up with 2 wins, one against Rangers, one against Real Betis, and losing the games against Rosenborg, Arsenal and Liverpool. The Liverpool one was a bit strange. We did end up losing 3-0, but in terms of chances we had double their shots and also 3 more shots on target. Possession wise in that game was only 47% to us and 53% to them. So although it looks 3-0 and it looks like a very uneven game, that's not the case. So take all results in pre-season with a pinch of salt, because it doesn't really matter. Now on screen what I'm going to be showing is the starting 11 that I think Ten Hag is going to be using and is most likely to use going into the seasons. And I'm not going to be using new signings, potential new signings like De Ligt or Mazraoui, because they're not official yet, and I don't want to put players in the starting 11 that we won't have available for the Community Shield. With that being said, then we have Andre Onana in goal. There's not really much to say about him. He's going to be our starting goalkeeper, and hopefully we're going to be able to utilise his ball playing distribution better this year. I think at the start of his Manchester United career he was pretty unsteady when it came to making mistakes. He was a big factor in why we were out of the Champions League very early on, but towards the end of the season he had really good form. He was making some decent saves, and although I think he faced the second most shots in the Premier League last season, which is crazy to think, I genuinely believe that this season he's going to have a much better one. And he's going to be very, very important to us and how we want to play out from the back. Moving on to the right back, then we have Diogo Dalot and Luke Shaw as the left back. If either one of them don't come back from pre-season in perfect condition and they're not able to start, I think Wan-Bissaka is a decent option at right back. He played pretty well in the tour, and that is as long as he is here, because he is more than likely going to be moving on to West Ham potentially, of course. But for now, without Mazraoui in, and if Dalot isn't fit, then Wan-Bissaka isn't a bad option. At left back, I think Harry Amas is going to be Luke Shaw's understudy and probably the backup to him all season. I don't think it's fair to kind of chuck him in at the start, but he has really good potential. He's incredibly good with the ball at his feet. He's not really he doesn't really make many mistakes when it comes to pressure on him. He likes playing out of the back as well. He's very progressive. He's good at dribbling, good at passing, and defensively as well he's very solid considering his age. He had to defend against Mohamed Salah, which is no easy feat, and he was able to do pretty well. So I think having him as an understudy and Luke Shaw, if he stays fit, will be a really good kind of mentor for him. But he needs to stay fit, and that's the key thing with Luke Shaw. The 2 centre-halves is going to be Martinez and, in my opinion, probably Harry Maguire again. For whatever reason, we have suffered immensely with injuries, where we have Maguire actually missed the Liverpool game. He was pulled out of the squad completely. Then Lindelof, Johnny Evans also picking up knocks in that game, and Will Fish going off with a boot on his right leg. So it looks like he's out as well, and selling Willy Camboala to Valencia. We're again very short, and of course Lenny Yoro being out now for 3 months with and I think he's about to have an operation as well, so it's not looking good for us. And if we don't bring in De Ligt, then I think we're really going to struggle. So we definitely need to do that deal. But I think Maguire starts if he is fit. If he isn't, then I really don't know. I hope he is, because if we have to have Casemiro as the centre back again, I think it's going to be a very difficult start of the season. Speaking of Casemiro, he is going to be the number 6, the more defensive role, because we haven't brought anybody in. Kobbie Mainoo is going to be the number 8. He's very, very important to us and how Erik ten Hag is going to want to play, and I'll go into all the tactics in a second. Marcus Rashford out on the left, Diallo out on the right, and Bruno Fernandes as number 10. Again, I think Bruno is going to come back in peak physical form. He's one of those players that is raring to go at the start of every season. He's incredibly, incredibly important to us for the creative side, but not only that, he works super hard on the defensive end, and he's just very important, hence being the captain. I think Amad Diallo needs to start more games. He has been very, very, very good for us in pre-season, scoring a couple of goals, creating some really big chances too, and just being an all-round beast, to be honest, on this right-hand side. Something that we have lacked immensely the entire last season. We had Anthony, who was very good at the defensive end, but didn't really offer anything going forwards. When we had Garnacho on this right hand side, he played very well, but it's not his natural and best position, which is obviously on the left. But I think with Diallo performing as well as he did in pre-season, he's definitely going to be the one starting. And again, Marcus Rashford out on this left hand side, he's looked very sharp in pre-season too. And depending again on how Garnacho comes back from the Copa America, then Garnacho could start, but I think Rashford, with how he's performed in pre-season so far, he might just get the nod at the start of the season at least. Although in my personal opinion, I think Garnacho, that's his place to hold, and it should be Marcus Rashford to kind of push for that starting spot instead of the other way around. And then Joshua Zirkzee up front. Now, with Rasmus getting injured, it could be 3 weeks for Rasmus. It looks to be a hamstring issue, but I don't think it's a super serious one. But with Joshua Zirkzee coming back from the Euros, not really playing, he should be fresh, he should be fit, and he is in training already. So depending on that, it could be another Ten Hag kind of decision to play somebody like Jadon Sancho as a false 9. But I think Joshua Zirkzee, if he is fit, definitely needs to start. So, with that being said, we're going to jump into how Erik ten Hag has tried setting up Manchester United in the build-up phase. There are 3 different phases that he's tried, and in the first one we're going to look at is where Onana essentially becomes the middle of a back 3, with Martinez will slide out to the left, Maguire will come out to the right, and then Onana will be that kind of middle ball distributing centre-half, with then a single pivot in Casemiro, who is then going to be coupled with a couple of midfielders. So Kobbie Mainoo he will excel in this role because he'll have the license to kind of drift forward, get involved in the play, but also drift a little bit wider, pick up balls. If you think back to the Euros, how Toni Kroos does it, De Jong when he plays for Barca, and even Ajax, he would drift out to this left-hand channel and be able to progress the play, whether it be through dribbling, whether it be through passing. And I think he's going to be seriously influential on this Manchester United team and how we want to build up. And I think Diallo as well, he has the capability, he's more than good enough and very tactically solid as well to come into the middle. He's able to play kind of inverted, he's able to hold his width, he's just very good all round. He can even play left back and cut inside and play that inverted role, which I think him and Mazraoui, if we do end up getting him, that's something that both of them can do. So we're going to have a lot more options on both flanks, especially if Luke Shaw can't stay fit and Harry Amas isn't up to the task of starting bigger games. But in terms of the width, I think Luke Shaw and Rashford, they have a very, very good partnership when it comes to the left-hand side. Luke Shaw will charge up and kind of do the overlap, and it allows Rashford to have that one-on-one, which Ten Hag has really tried in pre-season to make the most of. You can see if you did watch any of the pre-season's games, but if you didn't, basically what would happen, we would almost aim for either Marcus Rashford or Amad Diallo to be one-on-one with their fullback, give them as much space as possible, kind of manipulate the team to one side and a really quick switch to the other one, and then allow the flair players to kind of attack one-on-one. And it worked really well, especially when it came out to Diallo. I thought his creativity coming in from the left, whether it be scoring goals, whether it be just creating chances, he was the one that kind of was the catalyst on tour when it came to creating chances, scoring goals and whatnot. And I think if we give him the same types of opportunities in the Premier League, I think he can definitely replicate that. So hopefully when Rashford comes inside, he's going to be more influential this season, and Diallo as well. Bruno, I think he will be able to just have free license, just do what Bruno does. But with Mason Mount, when he was in this role where Bruno is currently, he was also very flexible, whether he would come deep, whether you play basically on the shoulder with the striker, whether it be Jadon Sancho, whether it be Rasmus Højlund for the 15 minutes that he played. They were both very, very good, and Scott McTominay also did this role very well. And something I could potentially see, if Joshua Zirkzee isn't ready, then I wouldn't be surprised if you see Bruno Fernandes as that kind of number 9, whether it be like a false 9, and then you have somebody like Scott McTominay. Because what happened quite often was, let's say Jadon Sancho was number 9, he would drop deep and then Mason Mount would make the run behind, and I think that would actually benefit Scott McTominay. It's his strongest asset, kind of getting into the box, making those late types of runs, and having other players kind of create that space for him to charge into the box. So I think, again, if we have Scott McTominay as a plan B if he's not sold, because of course there are loads and loads of options for Scott McTominay to go, and it kind of depends on him whether he wants to stay or he wants a new challenge. But we've got lots and lots of options in this kind of system that Ten Hag wants. But that's the first kind of build-up. The second build-up phase is very, very similar, but instead of Andre Onana being the middle centre-back, it's actually Casemiro, and this happened a lot during pre-season, where the two centre-backs would split. Casemiro would then drop into the kind of playmaking role, and whoever was next to him, whether it be Toby Collier, whether it be Eriksen, they would drop into this single pivot, and it was very important for Ten Hag to have this single pivot. Now, in the other videos I have made, Ten Hag has always liked building up with a 3-1 system, hence why when Andre Onana pushed out, it was still 3-1, where then Casemiro was a single pivot, and the back three was would be Martinez, Onana and Maguire. So keeping with that kind of shape, this one is a little bit more, how do I say it, a bit more aggressive, because you can see there is more of a gap between Kobbie Mainoo and the rest of the team. This happened more towards the end of the game, so Liverpool and Betis, where there was a very, very clear 3-1-6 rather than like a 3-4 with a diamond 3. And in this kind of situation, you would have either Mason Mount dropping deep, you would even have like Wan-Bissaka going into the middle as well, leaving Diallo wide right. But in this situation, because I think this actually happened and we created a decent chance from this, where Wan-Bissaka was out to the right, Diallo dropped in a little bit deeper, we had Mason Mount. I think Rashford came into Harry Ama, sorry, was where Luke Shaw is, and then Rashford stayed out wide. As again, trying to kind of isolate Marcus Rashford against any fullback that he had up against him. And looking as sharp as he did and as quick as he did, it really did cause so many problems for everybody. But in this one, you can kind of see where Luke Shaw would be making that kind of underlap, Diallo doing Diallo things, and Dalot holding that width on the right hand side. Again, this could easily change where Diallo would be the wider one and then Dalot would swap in. There's going to be so much rotation in the front 6 players, where Bruno would then drop, go a bit further, Zirkzee would drop in. We did do it quite well, but not all the time. And I think when it comes to the season, it's going to take a little bit of time to gel all of the players, because Zirkzee hasn't played with anyone. If we bring in Mazraoui, he hasn't played with anyone. Luke Shaw obviously has played with Marcus Rashford, and that's why I think they'll both start, because they have such good chemistry down this left-hand side. And Bruno, yeah, he needs to start, because if he's in this kind of role where Mason Mount was in pre-season, we're just going to have so many more chances created just because of how Bruno plays. But I think in this kind of role, it doesn't necessarily suit somebody like Kobbie to be this single pivot and kind of the defensive work of it. I think he's much more influential going forward. So the other thing that you could potentially see is Casemiro staying there, staying as a single pivot where Kobbie Mainoo is. Martinez then would slot into the middle centre-back role, where he would be the distributing centre-half, and Luke Shaw would be the left-hand centre-back with Cobby where Luke Shaw is. So if you understand that, so Casemiro would be number 6, everyone would just kind of shuffle across, Luke Shaw being a part of the back 3. And I think that makes more sense in how Ten Hag would possibly want to, but I'm just going off of how we did play in pre-season, where Harry Amas was very much forward, and then Collier, Eriksson would drop into this number 6 role. So that's the second one. We're going to move on to the third one now, and this is something that I haven't actually seen Ten Hag do a lot, and this is what I kind of mean with him trying to revolutionise Manchester United, playing different systems, doing different things that we haven't necessarily seen a lot. I think last season, or even the season before, he had a very clear idea of how we wanted to play, but then when it came to it, and I think it took like 20 minutes and then he just threw the plan out of the window. He realised we couldn't do it and went back and reverted to this counter-attacking style where everybody was kind of more suited, where we had Rashford, we had so much pace, Garnacho, and even Rasmus Højlund to a certain extent, where we just kind of sat back a little bit, hit teams on the counter-attack, and but I think this year will be the year where we start seeing exactly what Ten Hag wants, and I'm looking forward to it. I'm very excited, especially from what I've seen from pre-season. As I said, I'm not interested in results because it wouldn't have mattered if we beat Liverpool 5-0. It's not in the league, but losing 3-0, again, it doesn't matter. We had 19 shots, or 18 shots, I believe, and 8 on target. So that is more than enough chances to score goals. We just weren't clinical compared to Liverpool, who obviously had, I think, 9 shots and 5 on target, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, this one, so basically we just had the normal 2 centre-halves. Casemiro stayed in that single pivot role, and then with the left back and right back, so we had Harry Amas, who would drop into this left-hand side, and then Wan-Bissaka, who would drop into this right. And then again, you just had pretty much a flat 5 up front, whether it be Mason Mount, whether it be Rashford, Scott McTominay, anybody who kind of played there. There was so much rotation, and this formation, especially in kind of build-up, was the way we tried the most to get the one-on-ones in the wide areas, because Diallo stayed wide right, Rashford stayed wide left, and the two fullbacks, instead of kind of being up there and then forcing either Rashford or Diallo in, they allowed them the space. And this actually benefited us in the defensive stage as well, which I'll go into in a second. But with this, we were able to have a really nice rest defense. We weren't able to be counter-attacked as often, because now you have 5 in like the defensive area and then 5 going forward. But also you can see Casemiro with that small little line up. It wasn't a defensive kind of move by Ten Hag. He wanted another kind of 3 block in the middle to keep the possession going. So if it came to Diallo out on this right hand side, a Mount was marked and no striker was available, we went back to Diallo, and instead of then just passing back to Maguire because Casemiro is so far back, we were able to move it to Casemiro and then immediately fire it all the way across to Rashford, and we're still on the attack. Progressive passes, progressive kind of attacking football is what we wanted, is what we've always needed at Manchester United since Sir Alex Ferguson has left, and we've really struggled to find that identity again. But I think with the 3 types of different build-ups, there are loads more nuances to how Ten Hag would want to build up, and I think that video could be an hour long, and I don't exactly want to make an hour long video of tactics. I could, of course, I love talking about tactics and seeing all the comments too. But yeah, with this one, I think it's very much going to suit a lot of our players. You can kind of see Luke Shaw, he's going to be very good in this midfield kind of role. Now, if you think about like a Manchester City, with the inverted fullbacks, they're very much in the midfield. Whereas when Ten Hag implemented this, they weren't wide, but they weren't in the midfield either. They were just in this right-hand channel where they could be very fluid. If Wan-Bissaka would move forward, then even Mason Mount would drop in, and it was always just a nice solid structure where we could build from, and I think we'll see this quite a bit more as well. I wouldn't be surprised if Casemiro dropped into this middle as a back three and Dalot came on the inside, but then when the ball was progressed wide, we then ended up in this shape where we were able to control the possession in the opposition half. So that's kind of the build-up, the 3 build-up stages. We're now going to look at how Ten Hag wants to defend. So you can see on screen right now we have a back 4, and then we have again like a midfield 4 and then 2 up front. So it's a 4-4-2, a 4-2-2-2, however you want to look at it. There are 2 banks of 4, 2 strikers, and then the wingers have different roles depending on where the ball is. So I'll go into that in a second. So whereas last season it was very much a 4-2-3-1 at the start of the season, towards the end and the middle, we very much defended in a 4-4-2, but it was more of a rigid 4-4-2 as a mid-block. And then we looked to press with different triggers, whether it be pressing out wide, whether it be forcing people back, and then we all squeezed up a little bit. There was some kind of structure to it, but it wasn't a very clear idea. Now in pre-season, the thing that I've really noticed and actually liked is how aggressive we've been with the man-to-man system that Ten Hag is trying to implement. Now you can see where we have Rashford, Xerxes, Fernandes and Diallo. In pre-season, depending on the personnel and where the ball was in the build-up phase, it was almost a flat line, like a complete flat line. I did go into this in a previous video where it was a 4-2-4, and I was actually really impressed because it's something that we haven't actually seen. We struggled a lot last year when it came to where we pressed a little bit, but then the fullbacks weren't pressing, so it was just an easy pass to the fullbacks of the opposition team, or even players weren't following men, and it was just really easy to play around us because 4 people pressed, 6 people stayed back. And I don't know whether that was because the fullbacks weren't exactly sure, can I leave the centre halves to deal with this? Can we press high? If I press high, are we going to get played over? So I think definitely there's been a huge change for Ten Hag, and especially in how he wanted to set his teams up defensively. We were much more aggressive, much more physical as well, something that I really liked, especially when Scott McTominay played. He was able to kind of track back, use his 6'4" frame, get in between the ball, make some decent tackles, even chasing backwards and outmuscling people against Betis. It was really good to see, and I think moving forward in the season, it's really going to benefit us. Of course, I think with any system that you play, there's going to be risk and reward. Think of Jurgen Klopp, think of Pep Guardiola. You want to play high up the pitch, but of course there are going to be chances the opposition create where they play around you really quickly and a ball over the top and then they're in. But as I said, risk and reward, it's what Ten Hag wants, and all the players need to buy into that. So we're going to move on to the second phase, which is basically just how it's going to look against, more often than not, a system and kind of formation that we will see a lot in the Premier League. So the main formations that we see is like a 4-2-3-1, a 4-3-3 with a single pivot, but of course it's very malleable and it changes quite a bit. But you can see with a back 4, we have 4 against 4, and then even with the 2 midfielders, it's 2 versus 3 in this situation, where Casemiro is close to their left hand side centre mid, and Kobbie Mainoo would be close to their right hand side, leaving that number 10. But it's going to be a very difficult pass. Let's say the goalkeeper has it now, where does he go? He could go to the right back for sure, then Rashford squeezes up. If the ball goes back, that was a trigger for Ten Hag's men to get forward, to go man-to-man press, to be aggressive, and it's exactly what we did. So in this kind of system, I'm going to show you now with the third stage. The ball is with this left-hand side centre-back. As soon as the ball is played to an area where Ten Hag wants us to press, if the ball is played backwards, if it's not such a good pass, and we can press, you can now see everybody latches onto a man. So the ball go out to the left back, Diallo would push up, Fernandes would then mark the left centre back, Xerxes would come across to the right centre back, Rashford would also press to the other fullback, maybe stepping inside a little bit, kind of holding space rather than the man. On that far side you can kind of see Luke Shaw doing the same instead of marking his man. But the one thing I was really impressed with, something we did not do last season whatsoever, or very, very rarely, you can see Diallo stepped in front of his man, and he was a part of the press. Well, Wan-Bissaka was in pre-season, Harry Amas was again in pre-season, where the fullbacks were connected fully to the press, and it wasn't like a front four pressing and then that's it. And with both fullbacks actually being aggressive, we were able to win the ball back so much, because it's harder to play passes around the corner when there's nobody there. If you think back to last season, if the ball got played to the left back of the opposition team, it wasn't too difficult to just play round the corner to the winger who had 5, 10, 15 yards of space, and then able to kind of play out that way, where the number 10 would drift into space, the striker would make the run. It was a nightmare to deal with for us. We weren't very good at it either. But in pre-season I saw some really good things, really good habits that I hope we keep. Now, the one thing I'm a little bit unsure about, and I'm not entirely convinced on, is how Casemiro is going to play in this role. So in pre-season we had Toby Collier next to him where Kobbie Mainoo would be, and Collier, in my opinion, was one of the most impressive people on tour. He was incredibly aggressive, he wanted to win the ball back in the right area, he made good tackles, good fouls as well, which I really like. So in a system like this where everybody is man to man, it is important that you are no kind of further away from your man than 2 yards. Because if everybody commits to this press, you can see Fernandes coming across, Diallo coming across, Diallo stepping in front, even Xerxes, Mainoo. But then if there's a pass to Casemiro's man who is 10 yards away, that completely breaks the press, because then we have a number 10 that we've got to deal with that nobody's marking. So that risk and reward, again, the aspect of that, everyone has to do their part. And in pre-season, Casemiro was the weakest link of this. He was always 5-10 yards away, and even if he then pressed the man, he was leaving this huge gap wherever he was. And because he was 5 yards late, even if he was only 5 yards, it was an easy flick round the corner. And you think of the quality we're going to be playing against with Phil Foden, Kevin De Bruyne, Martin Odegaard, Saka. The list could go on, to be honest, with all teams in the league. It's going to be so easy for them to exploit the space where Casemiro is going to leave. So I think looking forward to this season, we definitely need to bring in somebody who can play this role. But if we don't, I really don't think Toby Collier will be far away to take over from Casemiro. I think he has all the fundamentals you're going to need in a number 6. I think it's a little bit too early to throw that responsibility onto him. I think he should be bedded in properly, kind of like Garnacho was. I know Kobbie Mainoo was thrown in, but I think Kobbie Mainoo's qualities really showed through, and we relied on him way too much. And I think if we had a season where we weren't so reliant on people who weren't injured, Kobbie would have been brought in slowly and better as well. But Casemiro really needs some attention, and I think in this system it works to a point. He needs to be physically fit enough, and I just don't think he's able to cover that amount of ground. And we're going to move on to the final kind of image, and this again is something that I'm not entirely sure on how we're going to deal with. So this is now a back 3, and a couple of teams do play this in the Premier League. It is more seen now so than 5-10 years ago, where teams like Brighton used to build up in this. You have other teams, I think, like Nottingham Forest, who have done it in pre-season as well. Even Fulham have tried this. So there are lots of teams that can do this, and this is a question that we haven't been asked on pre-season. How are we going to deal with a team that play 5 at the back or build up in a 3 like this? And I think there are different options. So we're going to look with the man Bruno Fernandes is marking, he plays it backwards. Again, that's going to be a trigger press for us. And in this 4-2-4, it's going to be very difficult because the back four of us with Dalot, Maguire, Martinez and Short, they have to be as a back four. Dalot can't just charge up here without kind of any reason. He needs to hold the space, otherwise Maguire's man's going to spin in behind. It causes more problems, so he's going to have to be disciplined. But as soon as the ball is played back, Diallo then pushes up, Fernandes latches on, Xerxes, Casemiro, Mainu, but then the space out wide, it's very similar to how we were broken down last season, and it's not something I'm entirely sure on how we are going to deal with properly. In my personal opinion, what should happen is Fernandes, instead of marking the man who he's directed to right now, actually needs to step across in between them. And when he's in between them, press that and let Diallo come out wide. Let Casemiro deal with this one in the middle. Xerxes then comes across, Rashford comes across, and the man that's left is the one Marcus Rashford is closest to now. And we allow the pitch to become narrowed. We leave half of the pitch for us to defend, and then if for whatever reason or somehow they're able to break it and they find the pass out to the right, that's something that we have to live with. It's something that, again, risk and reward. We want as little kind of space for the opposition to build up in, and with building up in a back three, the wing backs are going to be the ones that have the most space, especially when we're defending in this 4-2-4. But there is lots and lots and lots of positives to take from this preseason. I've been really impressed with Harry Amas, Toby Collier, Diallo especially. Rashford's looked fairly good. Rasmus looked very strong, quick in the 15 minutes that he did play. Unfortunately, again, his injury. Lenny Yoro, really solid. Unfortunately, injured again. Wan-Bissaka, if he does stay. Even Casemiro wasn't terrible. He does still have question marks about his physicality and kind of dynamism getting up and down the pitch. But only time will tell with that. So, with all of the stuff that I've gone over, it's going to be the end of the video. I really hope you have enjoyed it. You've learned something. If you have any questions about things in pre-season, if I haven't made anything clear, make sure you write it down in the comments. I read everything and I'll reply as well. I'm more than happy to do so. I love having conversations down there. And some of the comments everyone has been putting down have been incredible. I really appreciate all the support you have given me over the last kind of month of putting out videos. It's been incredible, so thank you very much. So yeah, thank you very much for watching. I hope you have an awesome rest of your day, and I shall catch you in the next one. Bye bye.